I wanted to start with this picture of the Moorhead Block building. There it is. There's the Bartlett Drug Store, and that's kind of how it looked in right before it closed. You know, in the 60s and 70s. It closed in 1971, but that's where it sort of looked like. Some of you remember that store? You're there. So I have a question to begin with. This is what I want you to, you can talk to your neighbor too, we'll pause a moment. Do you think this picture I'm going to show you, what year is it? Is it 1912, 1927, or 1942? And that's an overview of downtown Chico with the old plaza in the front. And so I'll just let you look at that a minute and you can guess what year you think that is, and even, or ask your neighbor if you want.
1927.
There's a couple of little hints in there.
There's a crane in the back that I don't think they had in 1927.
No, that's the road. That's the Esplanade. That's the Esplanade. So I'll give you a little hint. You want a couple of hints before I give you the answer? Okay, in the very top of the picture where that looks like a crane, it's not, it's the Esplanade. That's Chico High's there. With the round, with the old Chico, with the round
Yard in the front?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then down here in the bottom in the center is the post office. Now the arena's gone. That's an outdoor arena that's next to it. And if you look carefully, the Moorhead building, it's still, it hasn't been remodeled yet. So the answer, and that you'll find out later in the presentation, the years. I don't, there might be both, I can't really tell. Well, it was 1927. Yay! There'll be more questions. So we're going to now jump back. John Morton Wasti, I am told is how you pronounce that, was born in Chico in 1877, and he was born at this house. And people have often asked me, well, where was that located? And last time I spoke, I didn't know, but I have since found it. And there was the house. That's what it looked like. And he's the little boy on the far right, over there on your right, standing next to his sister. And you can see they did a pretty good drawing of that house, I think. So when people say, well, where was that located? Well, to get to his house, first you'd have to cross over this bridge. Anybody got an idea where this is? There's water in it, so it's shocking. What?
The railroad in town.
It's the end. It's Sandy Gulch. Yes, there you go. And if you look at it, in the background is this kind of big building there. Okay, where now is Miller's Mansion. That used to be there, and it looked like this. That was Daniel Bidwell's house. So you'd go over the bridge, past Daniel Bidwell's house. Here's Daniel Bidwell's estate, the Five Oaks Ranch. And you had to keep going, and turn towards Nord. And the Wasti Ranch was out by, actually next door to Isaac Bennett's ranch in Nord area. So I kind of put a little arrow out there. So when he's a little boy, his father dies, and 2 years later his mother dies. And so all the kids are raised by an uncle who lived in town, McIntosh, and the grandparents. And his older brother, he had an older stepbrother, and became a judge in Berkeley, and he was living down there. And this is sort of what downtown Chico, this is called the Johnson House. It was on the corner, well, you know where Burgers and Brew is? Yeah. That used to be Johnson House right there. 3-story building, and word has it that there was many activities there, including a little red light district. And they were raided often, but they were never caught because supposedly somebody on the police force kept tipping them off. Didn't want the city officials to be embarrassed, caught there. And so right in that area. So here's the next question. So Wasti decides he's going to come up and start a drugstore here. He's going to come back. Okay, at that time in 1905, when he comes back, do you think there's 3, 4, or 5 drugstores? And you just ask your neighbor what you think. How many drugstores are already in downtown Chico? You can.
4 or 5.
There was 5. Well, he becomes the 5th one. Oh, there's even more. We'll see it when we go. I'm going to help you. So there's Lee's Pharmacy. which is in the bottom floor of the IOOF hall. 4 already existed. There's Crew Pharmacy, and that's a picture of the inside of the pharmacy there. And there it is, the outside. You can barely see the sign. And that was over on Main Street, and maybe you'll recognize at the end of the block, that building's still there, the Ostrowski, did I say it right? Ostrowski building, and then later became they called it, the Goldstein building. Before that, I think they called it the Woods Hall. Yeah, so it was, the names changed. And then in the far corner is the Graves. So there, that was Cruz. Then there was George Graves, the Graves Pharmacy, and that was, you know, where Zucchini and Vine was, and that building's still there. It looks a little different. This is, and then there was Hastings Pharmacy, and that was on the corner across the street from the old Osiers. And there's a little sign there. And this was actually called the Union Hotel, and the pharmacy was on the ground floor. And so then, there's another really nice picture of the Graves building when it had the awnings. And I'm afraid to move now. We had where'd I put it? I brought a little, you know, infrared, but it won't go on the screen. See right there at the top of, so wait, can I do this? Right there at the top, they have the little symbol of the mortar. Yeah, to show that they're, yeah, a lot of businesses would have some kind of symbol or something out so you'd know, oh, there's the pharmacy. And of course he started his, there it is, brand new drugstore in Wasti Drug Company in the Moorhead building, and it was right there next door to Clifford's, and Clifford's was also in there. So to give you a little, where Clifford's used to be. And then of course here's an old prescription book and lots of prescriptions, and there's their new prescription takeout that they had for there. So at the same time, downtown, we have 2 more other buildings going on, pretty exciting time. The year before, 1904, is this building right here. But that's what it used to look like when it was first built, but you can recognize the windows at the end, which are still covered up. Well, they're what, brick, solid brick out there. And of course they took off at some point the little round part and changed the entrance of it. And then next door to it was built a year later. Well, they started building in 1905. I don't think it was completed till 1906, which was the El Rey. Now, you know, we know it as the El Rey Theater. At that time, it was the Majestic Theater. Well, then down the street on Front Street, where we now call First Street, Chico High, this is the Chico High's first official building. Before that, it had started on the 3rd story of the old Oakdale School. And then they built this beautiful building, which I think somewhere later I'll show you where it was torn down in 53. Yeah, okay, thank you. I was like, wait, where's my notes? And my father went to school there. But did anybody else have parents or somebody go to school there or went to school there yourself? Because that, after Chico High was built, which we'll look at later, when Chico High was moved over to the Esplanade, this became Central. And so it was 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, I believe. And I'm not sure about the 6th graders, but I know 7th and 8th graders were there. And I actually have my father's diploma that he earned from Central. This would be a view if you were standing at 2nd Street looking south down Main Street. And so the trolley gets put in. We have a trolley service. Yay, there it is. And it started in 1905. And in my book, I give the route that it had. And it was quite extensive, and then it got narrow, smaller and smaller, until the trolley service ended right after 1940. But the trolley at that time, when they first started, it went all the way down to Sandy Gulch, turned around, came all the way up, and then there was another line. You'd turn right at 2nd and Main, and it would go over, and it would go down Salem, clear down to Barber, down to the Diamond Match. And then it would turn again and go over and went down through Chapman Town, and the route is explained in the book. That was pretty fun. And about 4 years ago, we were in, my husband and I were traveling, we were in St. Louis, and they kept the old trolley, and we took it down, I think it's St. Charles Street, and the whole time I was going, oh darn, I wish we still had that trolley in Chico. Wouldn't that be fun to hop on that? Now, this was the city park, the city plaza, and again, talk to your neighbor. What do you think? What was in the center of the city plaza when Wasti Drug Store was open in the early 1900s? It wasn't there in the beginning when it was first put in, but it was there in the early 1900s. Okay, anybody know what was in the center of the park? It's, you can kind of see it in there. Are you ready? You want to guess? Anybody want to shout out what they think it was?
Randy said a bandstand.
A bandstand?
No, a fountain.
A fountain.
There you go. There's well, there was a swing. Now that's just a drawing. You can't really see it. And the children are over where the center is, so I have a better picture for you. It was a water fountain. It was 10 feet tall. 10 feet. And it was donated by O.L. Clark, who was the mayor for about 8 years in Chico. And he donated, and there's a better picture of it. And well, I'm going to set that down so you can just... It's way up to the top. There's two men sitting behind it in the bottom. Yeah. And I think what's interesting about, I'm sorry, like nothing, like a teacher scratching their fingers on a chalkboard or something. Like,
You got our attention.
yeah. But what I love is also these wonderful urns. Oh my gosh, that were set about around it. Isn't that great? And then the other unique thing about it, you see those little faucets? They had cups hanging there so you could get your drink of water in the community cup. No mask. Actually, Shireen and I were just visiting the other day and said, remember when you're going up and you go to the drinking fountain, your mother would say, don't put your mouth on the fountain. Like that's going to purify it if we don't touch it. It's like, geez. I have no idea, but if somebody knows, let me know. That would be a great hunt. So, John Wasti doesn't last very long. I mean, he, within a year, gets in a little financial trouble and sells his business to Mr. Smith, and he renames the drugstore the Smith Drug Company. And this are all the little, he lists all the things they have, and I love number 8, paints and varnishes at the drugstore. Medicines, toilet art, veterinarian remedies. I guess you could go get something for your pig or horse or whatever. And then, of course, this is the one drugstore in town that has a marvelous soda fountain. And I don't know if okay, so here's another little advertisement. Oh, this one, I thought I had to put this in because it was so hilarious. Accidents will happen. Now the cure goes on. I mean, you can use it for man or beast. So it works on your horse and it works on you, what the heck. And if you get cut by the barbed wire, it's going to heal you up without a scar. And, it has everything to cure you. Well, then that was before, then the Food and Drug Act comes in 1905. It says, all right, you can't do that. You can't keep claiming all these wonderful miracle cures when it doesn't happen. So this is a little little can, and it had in it tooth powder. It was my uncle's who lived out, his grandfather was Isaac Bennett, where the Wastis lived next door. The Bennett family that settled the Nord area. And on the back it says, we're in compliance. We're in compliance with the Food and Drug Administration. It's safe. You can brush your teeth with this. Yeah, that was hilarious. But at the same time, they also sell this white pine cherry cough syrup, guaranteed a cure, made for colds, hoarseness, bronchitis, sore throat, and all diseases of the throat and lungs. You just get that cherry pine cough syrup. I want some of that today. And then George Graves had his own special remedy for chill. I mean, the things they claim they're going to cure is hysterical. Well, when he retires, the Smith, Wasti Smith, then Bartlett Drug Store get the formula for that. Different drugstores, as they close, would sell their little homemade remedies, and they announced a lot of advertisements. We have the Graves remedy here for you. And this is an old bottle that Randy Taylor had. And did we ever find where Knox Pharmacy was? It was, we think, on 2nd Street, I think. On 2nd Street.
In Broadway on South Side.
South side of 2nd
It
Street.
was only there for like
Very
6 months, and then they had a big fire there and burned out.
burned out. And so that's quite a find, that bottle of his. And then here's some other remedies. Little liver granules, they're going to cure you. But, oh, dandruff. You want to get rid of dandruff? They got that too. And pretty funny. The other thing, oops, there we go. So there's a lot of competition downtown. So all the stores would have different prizes to lure you in. Come to ours. So if you bought anything you spent at the Smith Drug Store, you'd get a little key. And then you'd bring back your key and they'd have a box. And if you're a key, you know what? I was just dawned on me, like the car dealers do now. They send you the key. They got that idea here. And so you bring in the key, and if your key unlocked the box, you could win 20 bucks. Now, by the way, that would be like $489 today. The equivalent. And then they gave free pictures, and later they gave free candy. Just one time, I think a little bit later in the show, I have a picture where you can get a free little bottle of shampoo. So different things to get you to come. I mean, there's a lot of competition downtown. Well, the most interesting thing is this fountain, this drugstore fountain that they have. And they're going to sell not just sodas, hot coffee, hot chocolate, delicious drinks, oyster cocktails, and clam bouillon. And if you drink clam bouillon in the morning and hot clam bouillon, it settles your stomach. Oh, now marshmallows. That was a big thing because marshmallows had just been invented. And there's the chocolates, my favorite. And Loney's, I guess you say, they start selling chocolates all over the United States, basically because of the railroad. Before that, you were limited how far your goods could go without. And so here it is. There's the drugstore, and we think that's Mr. Bartlett standing behind the counter. It's, yeah. And it kind of reminds, well, it's a narrow little counter. That's the only picture we have, and that's thanks to the Carolyn Schaller Clayton and Barbara Schaller Mann. It was their parents were the last owners of the Bartlett Drug Store, and they had that picture there for me. What's interesting, it was the only drugstore that I'm pretty sure I've looked and looked, and I've looked at so many old papers and documents. They're the only drugstore in town that had a fountain. Even though, I mean, here's the inside of the Rooney's drugstore. He bought out Graves. And here's an inside view of Lee's Pharmacy. And the reason, there's speculation. Well, drugstores, especially during Prohibition, the drugstore soda fountain became huge. You couldn't go to bars anymore, so you went to the soda fountain and had your ice cream and certain. Well, I think that's my speculation. I have no proof of it. I think one of the reasons why the drugstores didn't open up a soda fountain inside was because here is just a sample of all the cafeterias that were downtown. There was Kennedy Candy's, Jack-o'-lantern, which was right next door to Lee's Pharmacy. There was the Bluebird Cafe, the Golden Poppy Cafe, Price's, maybe some of you might remember that. And of course, how many remember Coochie's? Yeah. So, I mean, and that's just a sampling. So there's already so many different little places. Hart and Warner eventually became the Jack-o'-lantern, and that was a little picture of inside them. And that's the window of Coochie's, of the chocolate shop. The Coochie's had two shops. One was on Main, one was on Broadway, and the one on Broadway was called the Chocolate Shop, and the one on Main was called Coochie's Fountain. Coochie's, not Coochie's, sorry. And then some of you, downtown was a happening place. Maybe some of you went to the Academy Billiard Parlor. That was a little later. I hear laughter. Some people must have been. So the billiards, so on one side's the billiard, the other side's the big fountain that they had going there. And I know some of you might remember Corner Pocket. Yeah, they had a big fountain too.
Yeah, that's what Mom's is.
My dad said, the owner of the shop, and this is a true story from my father who grew up here. He said, you know, because all the high school kids would go there, but he had a real strict rule: no fighting. If you got in a fight, you know that story? No, if you got in a fight or started a fight, you'd be kicked out like for a year. And so there was never any fighting. I guess he meant what he said. There's a close-up of the fountain, and that's some of the flavors where you could get. I listed them below because it's hard to see, of all the different fountains, all the flavors that he had there. And then he was one of the first to sell the velvet ice cream, you know, the kind of from the Froster Feast, the smooth, not the scoop ice cream, but the
Soft?
Yeah, the soft, the velvet soft ice cream. And then they sold, you know, there you go, 25 cents bricks to take home, 5 cents a dish. I love these prices. Okay, tamales were always big in Chico. There was like 2 or 3 tamale stores. I mean restaurants. They're tamales, and I think that's just wild because they've got beginning Saturday we're going to serve tamales. The Velvet Fountain was inside the Bartlett Drug Store. So the new. At that time, it's still Smith. Well, Smith now is going to sell it to Mr. Bartlett. And he was born in 1879 in Columbus, Ohio. And I kept thinking, why would he come to Chico? What would draw you to Chico? Well, his wife was Nellie Thomas, and she was born in 1882 up on Rock Creek, but they said Chico, but right over there. And that was the house they lived in, and it's still standing. It's down on 4th and Pine. And that was their home. And he brought in to the drugstore records. And he didn't sell the record players. Well, you could go down the street for that, but they had a lot of advertisements and listed all these records that they sold. So records, all of it, after the Victrola was produced, people could actually buy their own, you know, record player pretty cheaply. And so records became a big hit. And a lot of people wanted records. So then what else is going on in town? All right, well, I think you might recognize this building. This is the Silverstein building, and it used to have a big sign on the outside. It was the La Grande Hotel. Well, they started it in 1909. But the problem was Mr. Silverstein died, and there was some problems with the finances, and so the building it stopped for a while, and all these different people who had been working on the building sued him for lack of payment. Anyway, they finally got it re-sponsored and got the backing behind it, and finally got it open, I want to say, in 1910. But it took like a year and a half till they finally went for the La Grande Hotel. And it looks pretty much like that today, except for I don't think the tree's there. There's another picture of it. Another large building that happened, there it is still there, is the Breslau, Waterland Breslau, thank you, building. And that's what it looked like when it was first opened. This building, that sucker was put up in 6 months. That got the permit. They have a little drawing of it in the record, the paper, and then they start building it. And by October the next year, people are invited to come view the building. And it has an elevator. Yes. And they have an elevator man in it, but when the elevator man was sick or couldn't be there, either Mr. Waterland or Mr. Breslau would be there and take you up. And on the very top floor was the business college that started. And that building is still there. Now, I went in that, when I was a kid, on the 2nd or 3rd floor, I think maybe 3rd floor, was Rice's dental lab. And my mother's the brothers, the Rice, and then Anna Rice, married Mr. Passanetti, was one of my mother's best friends. So we would go up there. And about a year ago, I went up into that building and I went, oh my gosh, it's the same. I think it's the same linoleum that's on the floor. I'm pretty sure it is. And I went up the stairs, not the elevator. There was no elevator man. That has changed. That's now a push button one. So 1910, an ordinance is passed that they're going to remove all the telephone poles, electric wiring, and put everything underground. And the owners are going to be assessed for fees of things that are out in front of them. Northern Electric had to remove and reset the tracks, and all of this is so they could pave the streets. Okay, so all of that's coming about so we can have, well, they're going to start in 1911. They're going to start finally, well, the ordinance passed in 1910. A year later, paving still hasn't started. So now it comes out May 11th. Paving company given permission to start work. Yay! And one way they got the owners to finally say, okay, we'll pay, is they said, okay, you have 10 years to pay it back, whatever you're assessed. You know, your little $5. You get 10 years, 5 cents a month or something to pay it back. So the trustees are really excited. They're going to start. There we go. And many of you have seen that picture. They're starting to pave. But there were certain places where the Presbyterian Church right over here first said, well, we don't have the money. So they actually didn't have the section in front of the church that was not paved. I was like, could you pass the collection plate? Jiminy Christmas. So it's like 2 years later before they get it paved. Well, people are so excited there were even street dances on the pavement out there. Yeah, so they're pretty excited. So in 1911, for $55,000, something that you could, we get a new city hall, which is strategically located right across the plaza. And the plaza now is, they've added benches, they've changed it a little bit. And in 1927, don't ask me why, but permission was given to remove the fountain. And that's when the grandstand was changed. So, yeah, I know, and I have no idea where the fountain is, but it was removed in 1927. I know, too bad. It's really too bad. Now, Enloe Hospital opens in 1913, and that's the first building over on Flume Street. And all of the pharmacies delivered for free, not only to people, but to the hospitals. And that went on for quite a while. In fact, Marge Maddox, I know many of you know her, and what is Marge now, 96, 97? She said, we would get a call in the middle of the night, 3 in the morning, from a hospital that needed something. And they would go down and whip it up and take it over to the hospitals. Now, what's interesting about this one, it's before they had the sleeping porches on the side. But I love this advertisement for Enloe Hospital, this big advertisement, because you could get a Turkish bath for $2. Yeah, look at all the baths. Sulfur baths, effervescent baths, electric baths. I don't know what electric bath sounds. It doesn't sound good. I don't think.
The one-time bath.
Yeah, the one time. It's like, what? Oh, you gave her a shower. Oh, electric and hand massage.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And both lady and gentleman attendants. I love it. Well, there was another hospital down, and this building is now gone. It was called the Sisters Hospital, and it was down at 3rd and Chestnut, 2nd and Chestnut. Thank you, John. And there's a little sign for it there. And then there was the, this was called, first it was called the Sanitarium, Blantis Sanitarium, down on 8th Avenue.
Yeah.
Then it was the Chico Hospital. And then it was, I forgot what they called it. It's in the book. It's like, okay. But that place became a place, and many people, my mother always called it the birthing center. And many people, maybe in this room, were born there because Enloe didn't have a really full maternity service yet. My sister was born there. Wayne Cook was born there. Who else? Judy, do you think did your mom ever tell you whether?
No, my dad, I think,
was born there?
Salem Street.
No, that Salem was the first Enloe. This was Lannis Hospital, and then it started off as Lannis Sanitarium, and then his son took it over and it became Chico Hospital, and then it became basically Chico Clinic or something. But my mother always called it the birthing center, so I'm looking for the birthing
I
center.
have my tonsils out there.
Yeah, tonsils, there you go. Tonsils taken out there you go, yeah. And the building now is still there, but they took off all of the porch and all the decorative and all the, it's just, it's really ugly. It's just a straight deco building that's there. Now this one is hilarious. This was over on Salem Street. It was called the Twilight Maternity. And And basically, they had this method where they're going to put you under with, I think, some morphine, so you can have childbirth without, I guess, woohoo, I'm having a baby with no feeling. How these babies weren't, I don't know, brain damaged is beyond me. But it was, and that house is still there down on Salem. Oh yeah. Okay, now here we go, post office, new post office. Now this is a pretty interesting story. The Congress has passed some money, $100,000 to build the post office. But $15,000 could be used for property and $85,000 for the building, okay? Now on that site, where it still is, was a church. But I forgot, which church, John? Okay. And they said, we'll, if you help us move our building, we'll sell you the land for $25,000. Well, the government had said you only get $15,000 for the property. So I think Silverstein was headed up, and there's several people, and they raised the money. They raised $10,000 so they could buy the property, move the church for $25,000. So they have $85,000 left to build the building, and they actually came in under budget at $77,000. Now the first postmaster in 1950 was a man by the name of BF. It stands for Benjamin Franklin Hudspeth, and here's his lovely wife, Margaret, and they built this house, and that is my house. And it was built in 1913, and it's on the corner of 6th and Poplar, and come on by sometime. And so that's what started this whole business. It's like, oh, I got to find out who had this house. Now, most of the buildings downtown still had these wooden awnings. So anybody recognize this was a pretty old picture, that building? This is on Main Street. It's on Main Street. Well, that's Park Hotel. And then behind it is the Union Hotel, which is gone, but you look further down, you can see And then here's another, this is down Main Street, looking now north, and you can see all the buildings, most of them, not all of them, have these wooden awnings. Some have the canvas awnings. So, and this building is still there. Recognize now we call it the Phoenix Building. It was built by Mrs. Noonan in honor of her husband who had passed away, and they also had a drugstore for a little while, but he had died young. And so that's what it looked like. And if really, I mean, I've compared that picture. The building, especially the second story, looks the same. Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's a big fight over get rid of these wooden awnings. All the other towns have. We're behind, and there's these editorials that are just brutal. They're just like, we're so old-fashioned, and these things are horrible, and they look how dilapidated they are, and they're fire traps, and we're behind times, and even Marysville has gotten rid of the wooden buildings. For God's sakes. Marysville is ahead of us. Well, so they pass an ordinance, and they say in 1916, let me back up, 1911, so the trustees go, yeah, get rid of them. Well, right across the street, where Madison Bear Garden is Mr. Lusk, the big-time lawyer. His office, he lives upstairs, his offices are downstairs, and the property owners hire him, and they march over to the city council and say, we're not doing it. We have to have these wooden awnings. They're shade. Our customers want them. We've got to have them. And it gets this really heated debate. And one of the owners that owned the buildings, a lot of buildings at the junction, says, I'd rather cut off my horses' tails before I take down my wooden building. So they get in this big debate. So city council backs off and says, okay, we won't do anything. So another years go by, and there's huge. These editorials are just brutal, and I've put a couple of them in the book, so you can, the word for word reading. So finally, 1916, they say, okay, but this is what prompted it. They finally passed it again and said, okay, you got to get rid of them. Well, what started it was this building right here. It's on the corner. It was a bank, and it was on the corner of 2nd and Broadway, where now Crush's is. The new bank building. Okay. So what they did is they took the first step. So here, that's what it looks like. And they took down their wooden awnings and put in there, and put in these new little things and painted the building. And everyone said, doesn't that look great? And everyone said, yeah. And so they passed it again. And they said, okay, you get 6 months to get off the awnings. Well, 6 months comes and goes and there's still awnings up. So, I mean, and so then it's like, all right, by 1917, you have to have them down. Well, really, it wasn't until like November before they got them all down. So it took a couple of years. They finally got them down. But once down, then they put up brand new street lights. Aren't those gorgeous? In the back, and there's a picture of one, you can see it there. And then a lot of stores, now that the wooden awnings were gone, of course Moorhead Building never had, they always had the canvas, but they put up new signs. So now you start seeing downtown different businesses that start having their advertisement signs. Okay, 1918, the influenza plague hits Chico. And at first, people think, oh, it's going to be fine, it's going to be nothing. And then, of course, that changes in a real hurry. So I tried to blow it up, it's a little blurry, but 397 new cases reported in 1 week, just in Chico. Now, there's only about 1,500 people living in the area. So that's how bad it was. And of course, there's no medicines. There's no, I mean, the medicines they offer is like, put Vaseline in your nose so you won't breathe germs. I mean, it's like just crazy. There's nothing. So if a family got sick, they were quarantined in their house, and the health officer, they'd come around and put a sign in front of your yard and say quarantine house, and you had to be there at least 10 days after the last symptoms. And then people are so sick, and at that time World War I's going on, and Inlow had been drafted or was commissioned, and he had closed Inlow Hospital. So for a while, even Inlow wasn't open. So when you went in your house, there's no internet, there's no TV, there's no entertainment. You are trapped in there. So nurses would go to houses, and there's this one article, I put the whole thing in the book, it goes, patients die for want of nurses. And basically it was this huge guilt trip on all the women in town. If you're a woman, you just step up and be a nurse. You don't need any training. Not the men, just the women. No, the men are let off the hook. The women, what's wrong with you? Step up, and people are dying because you haven't volunteered. So then they put in a notice. First there was a smaller mask notice, and this is going on, and I'll show you the statistics in a minute. All persons in Butte County, the entire county, must wear masks. If you didn't have a mask on, $50 fine or 30 days in jail. And $50 fine was about $585, I believe, was the equivalent. They were not messing around. Well, this was an accident that happened with the trolley on the Esplanade, and you can see that everybody has on mask. It's the only picture we could find with the mask. I looked everywhere. And between October 8th and November 28th, 1,565 cases and 55 deaths. If you open up, you go through the old newspapers, every day is an announcement of who's died. I mean, that was just, the morgues, it was really severe. So another interesting thing happened at this time. So this is Main Street, and you've got right on the far right is the City Hall, and then the fire station's right there, and you see that little bell up there. Okay, well, at that time, there's one lone operator at night, and I'm going to show you some pictures of because it was, you'd pick up the phone and say, Julia, give me 93, and she'd get it for you. So this lady by the name of Julia Bradley is the lone operator at night, because people, I guess, are sleeping, no one's calling anybody. And it comes through almost not quite before midnight that the treaty has been signed and World War I is over. So she calls up the mayor, who says, ring the bell. Now this bell right there, whenever there's a fire or if someone has passed away that was a dignitary or is kind of famous in school, they'd ring the bell. So she goes, ring the bell, which wakes up everybody within distance, and they all come downtown to have a celebration and party. And I guess they forgot their mask, because 2 weeks later they'd have another huge outbreak. Yeah, history repeats itself. Yeah, there you go. And there's the bell, if you want to see it. That is the actual bell. It's over on 8th and Salem. And there's that's the bell that used to hang up there if you want to go see the real deal. It's a huge bell. I mean, that sucker must have rang for, I mean, you probably heard it clear up to Sandy Gulch. So, after they partied all night, so the next day they kind of closed the businesses. And despite the fact that Bidwell's didn't like alcohol, there was a lot of it flowing. And so the next day they have an impromptu parade that starts down, like around 1st and like where Collier Hardware is, and march up to the plaza and have speeches, and it was a grand occasion. I thought that I'd never heard of that in Chico, despite growing up here. It was pretty funny. Well, another thing that happened during this time is the construction for the Hotel Oaks continued to go on, but they postponed having an opening celebration until the masks were off. And so that finally, December 12th, they're going to have a big celebration to the grand opening of the Hotel Oaks. And that's so I thought it would be interesting to look at how many people all went to the Hotel Oaks. I remember it. Okay, so here that's it a little bit later. That's it even later in time. That's what it looked like shortly before. Okay, so really I was a good kid, so the story I'm about to tell you. My mother would have killed me. She never knew, so don't tell my mother this story. So for some friends and I, we thought it would be great to see what Chico looked like from the top of the Hotel Oaks. And by the late 1960s, it was all roped off. They were not renting rooms. So we would literally go one at a time and sneak past the ground, whoever was down there at the bar and whoever the clerk was, and get all the way to the top and out to Hotel Oaks. And there we are. I took a picture. That's Robin King Siegel. And I can't believe I didn't take more pictures. And that's from the top of the Hotel Oaks about 1967. And there's the church. You see the steeple of the church. And that building that's kind of it's pink now it's blue, is still there. And I'm going to show you another picture. I can't believe we didn't take more pictures. What were we thinking? Who knew? There is another picture. You recognize that's the outdoorsman over there? And that is the building. I'm going to come back. See the big White House right above Robin's head? Yeah. Okay, that was the Crew Canfield building. That's what it used to look like. And now if you go to, what is it, the Alley's Pub? The Allies Pub. That's where that building used to be. Caddy corner from Stansbury House. Yeah. Isn't it beautiful? Beautiful, yeah. Yeah, the bulldozed down. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm good. That's my next book, is all the old homes. Okay. 1919, back to Bartlett's drugstore. Mr. Bartlett, after the influenza, they made so much money. All the drugstores made a lot of money when everyone was sick. I mean, everyone's buying Vaseline and everything else from the drugstore. And so he buys another drugstore down in Kern County and sells half of his interest to Roy Rankin. And then in 1922, Roy Rankin becomes the sole owner of the drugstore. And that's where they lived, and that house is still there. And that's over on 4th Street, if you go by. That house was also, for a while, the original Dr. Inlow's son also lived in that house for a while. And I don't know who lives there now. Okay, so here, meanwhile, back on the corner where Roney's and Graves were, they sold that store, and they renamed it the Service Pharmacy. And I thought this was just hilarious, because it goes, it's just as easy as talking to shop at the Service Pharmacy. When you say number please, tell her number 90. And there's the picture of the ladies hooking you up to the drugstore. And that picture on the bottom is actually from Orville. And so there you go. So then, and then another big thing that and still at drugstores, we go to get our Kodak and get your films and get it developed, buy your camera equipment. That was huge. I mean, and that was a big lift for a lot of the drugstores. And then the Pepsodent comes out, and so you can go there and get a free tube, 10-day tube for Pepsodent. And some of the things they say, like Pepsodent brings prettier teeth, and it's why millions of women, again, just the women, employ it. I guess men don't have to worry about that. And I mean, the little narrative that they have with the advertisements are absolutely hilarious. You know, like you have film on your teeth and you want to get it off, so here's Pepsodent toothpaste, and there it is. Brighter taste, smoother look. And then another big thing, but if there's your Palmolive, for 50 cents you can get the little samples. Come and get your free samples. So Chico High, we remember the old building that was over there on the, did I tell you where that building was, Central? It was where now Merriam Library is. Okay. So they are going to build a new building, and there it is. And you can see it's not landscaped yet, and that is the new Chico High building. And how many people besides me are still mad that it's torn down? The whole room, right? This is an, I love this shot. This is an aerial view. Now, do you notice something about the background?
Oh, the gym isn't.
The gym's not there yet. No gym. The building actually ended up costing more than they had anticipated, so they had to cut some things out. So they cut out the gym. But they didn't have to wait that long because I'll show you that in a minute. Meanwhile, there again, Marysville, Oroville, everybody else has a municipal pool, and we don't, so we need to get with it. So there was a big push, we've got to have a municipal pool. So they come up with a plan to have a municipal pool and just build it in the park, which we now call the 1 Mile Dam, the Sycamore Pool. But with the first years they came up with it, Annie Bidwell is still alive, and even though she's given the park to the town, it seems to me, and some other people here that know more about this than I do, it seems to me that the trustees really don't move without her okay. They're not going to do anything without Annie's stamp of approval. So at a city council meeting, well, those days they just called it the trustees meeting, she said, well, I think it's a good idea, but I haven't seen the plan, so I can't approve it. So everything's held off. Well, she dies, and everything's on. We're building the pool. But this is right after the flu, so there's a scare, and there's rumors that if you go swim on the 1 mile, you're going to get something. So the health officer, his name is Harold Gray, puts this big article in the paper. Rumors that swimming in the creek can cause typhoid, diphtheria, scarlet fever, and whatnot are utterly false and ridiculous. And the whatnot. And the whatnot. Just hilarious. And there you go. And there used to be a diving board on both sides.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. By the time I was a kid, that second diving board was gone. But the old and the back, and they built bathhouses, and the huge, again, I put it in the book, a huge celebration. They had, fireworks and contests, and people gave prizes to the opening of it was 1923, the big opening of the 1 Mile Dam. And then downtown, this building was the First National Bank building that was built on the corner, right across from Osier's, on the corner of 3rd and Broadway. And everything was downtown. Everything. Grocery stores were downtown, doctor's office, dentist office. You went downtown if you needed something. Everybody went downtown. And my dentist office was on the 2nd or 3rd floor. I don't remember exactly. Right on the corner. I do know it was the corner. And when you went up to it, there was an elevator man with the old, move it, and he'd have to adjust it, which.
Dr. Van Nuys?
No, I had Dr. West was there, and before that was Dr. Beering. My grandmother started going there, and he would adjust it, and my mother would be like, "Oh God," and we kids are like, "Yeah, let's do it again, make it go faster." We thought it was hilarious. My mom was not thrilled, and then a couple of years later, here we are, Veterans Hall, and that's a beautiful picture of it. Now, meanwhile, back at Chico High, I love this shot because usually all the aerial shots of Chico, there's so many trees you can't see anything. But this had to be taken in the fall. Look at that view, even up and down the Esplanade, because all of the leaves are off. And you see what's behind Chico High now?
Gym.
There you go, 1936, new gym. And over here, Amory J. Hamilton's being built. And then you can see the Veterans building is right across from the high school, and yeah, I absolutely love that shot, and I liked it so much I made a blow up for you. So, and the blow ups also, that picture's in the book. Meanwhile, back at the downtown, out in front is a penny scale. The penny scales were big, and they were very popular around town. I mean, even I think Senator Theater had one up in the second floor that had a penny scale. And for 1 penny, the advertisement is even during the Depression, people could come up with a penny. And the thing is, no one had bathroom scales. It was too expensive. They just couldn't afford to have a bathroom scale at home. So if you wanted to check your weight, you went to the drugstore, unless you went to the doctor. And so there's a close-up of the little penny scale in there that was in front of Ozier's. In front of the Moorhead building. So now we got to get modern, this is old-fashioned, we need to modernize, and there they are taking everything down, which Wayne Cook has just put back up, thank God. But there they are taking it down. It's the 1940s, we don't need this decoration, and they're tearing it down, and that's what it looked like. Now they call it one of the most modern buildings in town. Oh my God, how ugly is that? But guess what? Look what's out front, the penny scale. Let's put it back out. Now, if you didn't have a penny, just walk down the street to Lee Pharmacy, and there is the Lee Pharmacy scale for free, which, by the way, is right back there and donated to the museum by Stu Thompson, who is the last pharmacist at Lee Pharmacy, and he has donated the scale so that, people can. I know all the women are looking around. No, nobody's here watching. Okay, I'll try. I'm not getting on that scale when there's witnesses. And then here's the Landis. This is now when it's changed to Chico Hospital. And then right over here on Wall Street, became a Chico Clinic on Wall Street. From 37 to 38, it was operated as an emergency hospital with consulting services. And then later was doctor offices in there. In fact, when I was a little girl, Dr. Tom was in there, and that's where we went to, Dr. Tom. And then new hospital, 1937, Inlow Hospital opens up. And that's pretty much what it looked like then, and a few years later. Now, I thought, look at out front. Can you see the awnings and the little, looks a little different now. Okay, next question. So now, we're between 1929 and 1944, how many drugstores are now in town? So go ahead and ask your neighbor or take a guess.
D.
Must be D.
I think I already gave the hint. Yeah, I gave it away. And here, this is all the places where they were, from Sensible Drug, Grant's Drug, Bartlett Drug, Lee Pharmacy, Fish and Clayton, Service Pharmacy, Crew Pharmacy, Park Drugs, Blair Pharmacy. Now Crew had closed. And then further south, it also opened Oakdale Pharmacy. And then later, there was also a pharmacy opened up on 5th, right there by the railroad tracks. And so, and this is a close-up. This is on the corner. I think it's a Ruby's Boutique or something that's now in that building. That's there on the corner of, and that was Fish and Clayton on Broadway and 3rd, I think.
Oh, this is Broadway.
Yeah, across from where Starbucks is, right across the street. There you go. Yeah, I love these pictures, and that was. And then, of course, if you didn't want to go to the pharmacy, you could get herbs to help you out, and there was lots of them. Some of you maybe knew Max Lee, that's his father, who had the China herb store. And then we also had Conway's Arrowhead Indian Herbs. Yeah, that was pretty fun. So 1944, Ray Schaller now buys the pharmacy, and he was born in Chico, and from here, and wait. You know what? I don't think he was born in Chico, but they moved here when he was really young. His wife, Helen Schaller, Hassel was her maiden name, was born in Chico. And there he is. It's a young man. And 1945, new advertisements, that is an old directory for Chico, and the advertisement that he had for the Bartlett Drug Store. So you'll notice it's biologicals, chemicals, Eastman, Kodak, Schaefer, pens, cosmetics. We got it all. We got it all. Penny scale is now replaced, and he puts in a doctor's medical skill. Now, anybody recognize this is Chico State boxer? This is Duncan McCowan. He boxed at Chico State from 53 to 56, and he came by every day to weigh himself, because as a wrestler, you have to have your weight exact. And it was the one free medical scale in town, so he would always come by. And Mr. Schaller loved sports. He played on teams at Chico State, and he loved sports, and so they would talk, Chico State athletics. And when they closed the store, there he is, Mrs. Schaller called up Duncan and said, "Would you like that scale?" And he said, "I sure would," and he still weighs himself every day on it. Isn't that great? And he says to me, "I'm still at my playing weight." I said, "Wow." Not many of us could say that. And so everything at the drugstore, the drugstores, they had clocks, they sold the Mickey Mouse Timex watch. Mickey Mantle. Sorry, Mickey. Perfumes. These are best-selling perfumes of those days. And then, of course, the toothpaste expanded. Oh, Rapid Shave. Rapid Shave came out for men. I remember my father, that was a big deal, getting that. Oh, Sucrets. Everybody Loves Raymond has an episode where his mother locks the Sucrets in the top drawer because, they were pretty. They don't sell those anymore. I don't know what was in them, but and of course, cameras were still big, chewing gum. All that was, you didn't go to the grocery store. You went to the drugstore, and these are just some of the advertisements of that time. Well, another thing that was big at the drugstore was magazines. And that was the main, people didn't go on the internet. They didn't do Facebook. They bought magazines. And here's like 3 really popular magazines. And Carolyn shared with me that they would have all the magazine racks, and people would come in and go through them, and sometimes they'd buy one and sometimes they wouldn't, and she'd let them go over and here's another close up. There's Mr. Schaller standing at the front door of his building. What time where are we at time?
About 3 minutes after 11.
Oh, I went over. I'm almost done here. I'm sorry. This was big. I said, I can stop. CHICO'S dial. And this was a big advertisement in the paper that all the numbers are going to change, and these directions are hilarious. Like number 2, listen for the hum of the dial tone, then carefully dial. But the big one is, and here's a little advertisement for it. Okay, if you mess up, you got to put the phone down and redial again. So there's all these directions on how to dial. I thought it was hilarious until we have an old-fashioned phone in our house, and my granddaughter was trying to dial on it. And I went, oh my God, I guess you do have to learn how to dial. Yeah, oh, the party lines were in. There you go. Yeah, the party lines. And they gave out pamphlets, how to dial carefully. The funniest one was, write down your number before you dial, so you don't mess it up. But they still had free deliveries, and everyone still said, call in your delivery. And to this day, you still can call in your delivery. You can call it in. Not your delivery, you can call in your order. They just won't do it. That is Lee Pharmacy, modernized inside. And I like the moose, all the head of the. Yeah. And then they decided they need to modernize because we're too old-fashioned, and there's all the scaffolding, and they're taking off all of the decorative parts of it. And so now Chico's really good. We're behind. We're going to get with it. So we've got new lampposts. We've got street lights coming in. I love it. 23 miles per hour in 1952. Some of you might have seen that picture before. And this is the old Esplanade, 2 lanes down the center. But that's what it looked like when many of us were young. And then they broaden it. There's new trees in there. That's what it looks like today. But before it was just 2 lanes down there. And this was another shot of Chico with the building. That building came down in 1969. Okay, 1965, we have 40,000 people within a 7-mile radius. We have 6 pharmacies still downtown, but now the suburbs are growing. So now pharmacies are moving out in the suburbs, and here's, you see can you guess where that is? The freeways come in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's the mall in the background. And we got so now we're going out, and I had another picture of the disco. Remember disco? That started the pharmacy. And so the mall's being built in '65, and this is the grand opening for the new Pennies. So downtown's really changing. Now this, I wanted to show you, because this is there's the old Coochie. So here is the Park Hotel, demolished in 1963, and then the big bank building demolished in 1969. Just kind of breaks my heart. And then 1970 was the big fire, Silver Room fire, and all of that was destroyed over there. And that's where, that corner is where we started, where Johnson Hotel was, the Johnson Hotel. And, so as things are moving now, we've got by 1970, only 4 pharmacies are left downtown. And 3 of those would close rather quickly. In 1971, Mr. Schaller passed away, and they closed that store that they had run for 27 years. The last pharmacy standing downtown Chico was Lee's Pharmacy, and that's Stuart Thompson standing in the front, who donated the scale that we have here. And that's it. There's the last picture of downtown Chico. Thank you so much for coming.